Hi guys, and welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about fourth dimensional consciousness. And I'm going to be talking about it from a perspective of how it's relevant for you, your human experience, the healing that you're going through, the transition in your consciousness that you're going through. So as you're listening to this, just enjoy, just soak it up, just let the information be absorbed by you and just let your consciousness kind of take it in. And some parts will click into place and will assist in your consciousness shifting because it will resonate, it will make sense. Other parts might just go over your head. However you receive this is perfect. Just go along with me. There's a mixture of a lot of different types of information here. And it's not all just woo-woo. This is all science-based. There's a lot of research out there about the different dimensions from a physics perspective, from a mathematics perspective, from a quantum science perspective, but I'm boiling it down and explaining it to you in a way that's applicable to you so that you can actually incorporate these consciousness shifts into your daily life and make sense out of it. And I'm going to assume that you have a basic understanding of the dimensions, but from the fourth to the third, let's just go through them quickly. So the first dimension is like a dot. It has no reference point. It is just a singular point in existence. In the second dimension, if you look at it from a piece of paper, you have now two dots. So you have two reference points, but it's still flat. It has no third dimensional time and space. The third dimension is when we have width, height, and depth. So we live in a third dimensional reality. We can move through time and space. We're not stuck on a piece of paper. So we have a third dimensional experience, but we also have a fourth, which I'm going to go into. And in the third dimension, we also have the experience of time, which some say is the fourth dimensional element, but we experience time in a linear fashion. So in the third dimension, we move forward, backward, to the side, up and down. So everything is linear in the third dimension. So these are the three dimensions that most humans are familiar with, the three dimensions that we experience on a day-to-day basis. Because from any dimension, you can always go down. You can always observe the dimension that is under you. And the fourth dimension, this is where it gets interesting. In the fourth dimension, there is time, but in the fourth dimension, there is all time. And what do I mean by that? Time is not linear anymore in the fourth dimension. So any fourth dimensional being can access any point in time. They have the choice to enter a slice of reality at any point in time because everything exists. The past, the present, the future. And a lot of people refer to the fourth dimension as also the astral realm. It is where the heavens and the hells reside. It is where you have your nightmares at night and also the biggest dreams as well. It's the whole spectrum of contrast that resides all at once in the fourth dimension. So you can view it as having all of the movie strips available to you, all of the movie strips that we move through in the movie of life here in the third dimension are now available to you in the fourth dimension. And this is where I want to come in and make it relevant to you and your human experience. If you're watching this, most likely you are navigating in the in-between lands of a third dimensional, fourth dimensional existence, probably even also a full fourth dimensional, even slash fifth dimensional existence. I'm also going to tell you a little bit more about the fifth dimension and how is this relevant to your life and how does this show up? What does a fourth dimensional experience feel like? What are the symptoms, even though the fourth dimension is not a disease, but a lot of people refer to ascension symptoms and things like that. So what is the experience like and how can you get an idea of that? I think I'm kind of navigating through the fourth dimension right now. So clearly, since all time is present in the fourth dimension, you may have been experiencing a warping of time. Sometimes time can feel really slow and long, and other times it's sped up. Like suddenly 6 months have just flew by and you were like, whoa, what happened with time? So our perception of time starts to get very malleable and it starts to move out of this very linear, calculated fashion. And it's been proven that time isn't a fixed thing. Time can be influenced. And this can be a lot for the third dimensional linear mind to understand, but it's true. So if you're experiencing that there's like a warping in experience of time, and that things are speeding up, that is a sign of your third dimensional experience starting to become a little bit more malleable. I also mentioned that it's in the fourth dimension that all of the realms, or everything in between heaven and hell exists. So if you're experiencing a lot of contrast, if you're experiencing a lot of healing and purging and polarity in your life, there's polarity it's extreme polarity in the third dimension, but it's a little bit different in the fourth dimension. I'm going to explain how. But if you're experiencing polarity on a very regular basis, you're having the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and there's like this bittersweet feeling and experience of life, then you're navigating through that frequential realm in the fourth dimension. But if you're having this detached and observative witnessing awareness to what you're experiencing, that is an indicator of more of a fourth dimensional consciousness. Because when we're very heavily embedded in the lower realms of the third dimension, we have polarity, but we're completely identified to our contrast. So in the lower realms of the third dimension, we react and we overly identify the ego as a very third dimensional construct, personality construct that we need to navigate through the third dimensional realm. But it's very identified with our experiences. It's very identified with our possessions. It's very identified with what we are directly experiencing. So when we're experiencing hardship or even bliss and the highs and the lows, it's like we are that. We are it, and we are very identified with it. But when you experience contrast in the fourth dimension, you have a witnessing awareness around it. So if you've been doing a lot of meditation, and if you've been doing a lot of healing, and if you've been doing a lot of the inner work, and you are separating yourself more and more from your direct experiences with reality, then you have this observant consciousness watching the highs and the lows. So you feel less identified with what is happening. And this is also a sign of moving more up into the upper realms of the fourth dimension and consciousness, or having a fourth dimensional consciousness. Because with this awareness that everything exists and everything exists in the now, you have more of a choice mentality rather than a reaction mentality. So rather than reacting to our experiences, we feel more empowered to have deliberate control, informed action. So there's less reactivity as you go up into the fourth dimension. And we're seeing so many people now moving more and more into the upper realms of the fourth dimension, and it goes hand in hand with all of the healing and the purging that is happening right now. Because in order to move up the vibrational scale, in order to move up the consciousness scale, we need to let go. And in order to let go as a human, we need to feel and we need to fully experience in order to fully let it go. And on a soul level, there is a deep, 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 deep desire to ascend, to go up in our own consciousness, in our own evolution on a soul level. And this is why so many people now are even doing ancestral trauma. It's been scientifically proven that we carry genetics from between 20 and 50 generations behind, back in the past. So we come with a blueprint from our past experiences and from a genetic line. And people are even doing healing across time and space to heal experiences that I haven't even had in this lifetime. Because people are understanding now more and more that we are all connected. There is only now. And the more we can let go of the lower densities, even though we don't have to, we can play around in the lower realms and visit the hell realms as much as we want to, and play with contrast and have fun with duality and create from that place. For those who are wishing to go upwards, they are now understanding that they need to let go and heal. And this is where it becomes fun, because then we come to realize that there is more than just the third dimension. There is more than just this lifetime, this singular point in time. There is infinity, there is eternity. We're infinite beings here to play around in this infinite cosmos of possibilities. And that's when you climb up the fourth dimensional ladder and you realize more and more that you have and can have more of an informed choice in what kind of reality you wish to experience. And then you might ask, well, how do I do that? How do I just choose a reality? How do I just insert myself into a clip of consciousness, into a timeline of the movie and experience that? And this is where the science of quantum physics and mathematics and reality becomes tangible. Because then we start to ask, well, what is reality? What is consciousness? What is existence? And what is life? And you've probably heard that everything is energy, and everything is frequency, and everything is consciousness. And what happens in order for a particular frequency to collapse into the third dimension is that it needs an observer. And if you haven't heard of the double slit experiment and what the presence of an observer does to reality, I highly recommend that you read about the double slit experiment. Double slit, not split. Double slit experiment, because this describes how the presence of an observer allows for energy to collapse into matter depending on the observer. And you might be like, what are you talking about now? But bear with me, I'm going to be explaining with you a little bit more in detail now how the presence of your observation of a particular energy, a frequency, can collapse it into your reality. And this is where manifestation comes into play. So you can never experience that which you are not the frequency of. And the way different wavelengths, different energies collapse into physical matter is with an observer, someone experiencing it. A lot of scientists are saying that nothing really exists without anything observing it. Everything exists as a potential, as a wavelength, as an energy wave, as a potential. And it's only when you observe that wavelength that you experience it. Some scientists even say that your home disappears when you leave it because there's no one there to observe it. And it's once you come home and you experience the frequency of your home that it appears. So everything exists as potential. There's infinite potential, infinite frequencies and realities in this universe. So this is where law of attraction and a lot of manifestation ideas come in, and you've probably heard of, in order to experience abundance, you have to tap into the frequency of abundance. In order to experience love, you have to tap into the frequency of love in yourself, because again, you cannot experience that which you are not the frequency of. Because it's with your observation, your experience of a particular frequency, as everything is frequency, that wavelength, that energy collapses into matter and it comes into physicality, and you get to experience it as what we perceive as physical reality. But what we also know, and what's been proven, is that there is actually no separation even in the physical realm, that everything is space. And the only thing that separates us and creates this illusion of separation is the difference in wavelength. And this is where there's been a lot of experiments with people walking through walls, people trying to change their frequency in different ways, trying to put their hands through different kinds of objects. Because if you can shapeshift the frequency of any physical matter, it will change its structure, and how it collapses then into physical reality will be different. So this is where it becomes fun and also a little bit like, because then technically it is possible to shapeshift. If you can fine-tune how deliberate and how influential and how much control you have over energy and frequency, you can change your reality. And that's what we're starting to experience in this fourth dimensional realm, is the contrast, the highs and the lows, and the heaven and the hell, and the morphing of time. So you can have the experience of frequencies and experience the direct difference between different kind of frequencies, because once you've been the frequency of a particular frequency, you have eventually more deliberate control. If you remember a particular type of frequency, you can bring it back. And this is where we can become more deliberate creators of our reality and deliberate creators of frequencies. Which frequency do you wish to choose to observe as a witness to then allow it to collapse into physical reality? And you might be like, well, what about the fifth dimension? Because there's a lot of talk about, ascending into 5D and the 5D world, and we're all moving into 5D. So remember that all of these dimensions are not places, they're level of consciousnesses. They all exist here at the same time. So the fourth dimension exists here now. A fourth dimensional being could choose to peek into this dimension right now. And a quick comment on this, because I mentioned that you can always perceive from the dimension you're in and down. So we perceive the third dimension and the second dimension, and we're also navigating through the fourth dimension. Beings of higher levels of consciousness and everything that exists in the higher dimensions can observe downwards. So this is also why we're going through such a massive healing transformation, and why a lot of people's telepathic skills are being turned on, then their psychic skills and their clairvoyant skills, because they're starting to be able to peer into the collective mind, and they're starting to be able to peek into the future and peek into the past in real time. And in the fourth dimension, you can't hide anything, because every thought, every timeline exists. So this is also why we're going through so much healing, because we're moving more and more and more towards embodying more and more unconditional love, which is the heart center, which also is the fourth chakra center. So it makes sense from a spiritual perspective. We're becoming more heart-centered, because in the fourth dimension, you can't hide anything. Every thought, every existence is. So if you have anything that you're ashamed of, anything that you don't want to share, if you have anything that you think you can hide, that needs to be purged and healed before you can fully enter into the full higher frequencies of the fourth dimension, because nothing is hidden there. You can't hide anything there. So fourth dimensional beings can peer into the third dimension and see everything that is going on. For those of you who are channelers, for those of you who speak with higher dimensional beings, you know what I'm talking about. They can access any point in time and speak with anyone at any point in time, because they're at that higher dimension and they can access it. So they can speak with any being in any point in time. They can peer into the third dimension in any point of time, because they have access to all of it at once. So as we're moving more up into the higher realms of the fourth dimension and closer to having fifth dimensional consciousness, we won't be moving into the fifth dimension in physicality, because in the fifth dimension there is no form. You cannot have a physical body in the fifth dimension, but you can have a fifth dimensional consciousness in the fourth dimension. And the reason that we're healing and shedding and embodying more and more of our heart consciousness is because we are moving up that frequential realm. We are becoming more connected. We are becoming more telepathic. And the more we heal and the more we ascend and the more we operate from heart consciousness, the fourth chakra, the more safe you feel in the fourth dimension, the more okay you feel with the full telepathy, the more okay you feel with being able to read other people's minds and access anything in any point in time. Because you're protected in your heart consciousness. When you're an embodiment of unconditional love, you have nothing to be afraid of. And that's when we're getting really, 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 really close to fifth dimensional consciousness. So a quick comment on the fifth dimension. From a scientific point of view, there's a lot of scientists that say that the fifth dimension doesn't really exist. We can't perceive it in the same way we can perceive the third dimension and slightly kind of the fourth dimension. The fifth dimension we can't perceive as we perceive here. So there's a lot of people who have been trying to do different kinds of experiments to give an animation of what the fifth dimension looks like. But you can look at it like this. The fifth dimension is that which contains the fourth dimension and all of the lower dimensions, and is the space holder for all of that. And that's where we come into total unification of all that is. So all of the timelines, all of the experiences, everything that exists come to total unity in the fifth dimension, because it's held, it is contained, and it exists all at once in the energy of the fifth dimension. So if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, this is also connected to the fifth chakra, the throat chakra. So the fifth dimension is the expression of all that is. Total unity, total presence, all that is now. And what separates it from the fourth dimension is that in the fourth dimension, you can actually have a physical fourth dimensional experience. But the fifth dimension is that which contains it all. So when people talk about, we're shifting into the fifth dimension, your physical body can't shift into the fifth dimension because there's no physicality there. But you can have a fifth dimensional consciousness, which is the total acceptance, the total unification of all that is. And that is a reflection of true unconditional love. Because when you're in a state of true unconditional love, you are at peace and you are one with all that is. You realize that every expression that is an expression of source, is an expression of God, is an expression of whatever you want to call it. It's an expression of unconditional love. Everything is existence experiencing itself as a form of life, as a form of evolution, as a form of growth in this ever expanding infinite reality. So you can have a higher dimensional consciousness in this dimension. And this is where we look at a lot of, ascended masters in this physical reality, a lot of enlightened beings, because they have reached a level of consciousness that is so high that they can be totally feel totally in union with all that is. And this is a very, very powerful state. It's a very powerful frequency. So it's been said that those who have reached such high level of consciousness, if you looked at it from frequency, which we can't because the human eye can only see a tiny portion of the frequency bandwidth. There's all of these other frequencies that we can't see. But if we had the ability to look at their frequency, their wavelength, they have such a strong impact on the collective. So it's the few enlightened beings, and there's becoming more and more and more of them, and we're all ascending and growing together, that are able to hold the collective consciousness and keep it from crumbling. And this is the path that we're all on. There's no separation, or gurus or ascended masters or enlightened beings are better than us. That is still a third dimensional separation consciousness. At the core of everyone and everything, we are all an expression of unconditional love. We all are all a part of all that is, and we are all here connected together, experiencing source, experiencing consciousness, expressing itself in different ways to learn and to grow and to evolve. So there is no one better than you or worse than you or anyone. We're all here as an expression of life. And each soul chooses to come down and have its own experience in its own unique way to learn and to evolve and to grow and to add more to this forever expanding universe. So even the good and the bad in the third dimensional space serves a purpose. And from the perspective of subconscious reprogramming, when we boil it down to thoughts and belief patterns, every thought and belief serves a purpose, and every thought and belief influences reality. They've done tests on individuals where they put all of the electrodes on their heads and they have them consciously think certain thoughts, and they've been able to measure that a thought sends out a particular light frequency that travels throughout all time and space. So every thought has a ripple effect, and every thought that you have influences all that is on a frequential level. And if you go back to what I said about how everything exists as potential, as frequency, your thoughts have the ability to collapse into physical reality. And this is how we can create our own realities with our thoughts. If you think a thought and you're able to maintain that thought for a certain period of time and match your electromagnetic field with the frequency of that thought, that will become your reality. So every single thought that you send out exists. They've even said that, back in the 50s, the show Everyone Loves Lucy, sent out, obviously it is a frequential experience, the TV show, and that is sent out through time and space. And a planetary existence in another galaxy today can now have received the frequency sent from that show and watch that show now. So knowing that every single thought that you have has a frequency, every single thought that you have is emitted and sent out into the universe, into infinity, and has ripple effects. It affects everyone around you. You've probably heard of the butterfly effect. Probably makes you feel a little bit more aware and conscious of your thought patterns. And this is where subconscious reprogramming is so effective, because sometimes we can feel like, but I don't have deliberate control over my thoughts. I just think all of this stuff and I don't even know where it comes from. And a lot of times it's really negative. And this is where the belief systems come into place, because the belief systems are like the popcorn kernels and that are inside of your brain, and the heat of your brain make those popcorn kernels pop. So if you have some bad popcorn kernels that are manifesting themselves into, negative realities, we can change those popcorn kernels. I know this sounds super metaphorical, but I think you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. And that's what we do in subconscious reprogramming. And there's also a million different ways to change our thought patterns. But I wanted to throw that out there so that you feel like, oh, there's tools out there for me to change my thought patterns. And obviously meditation is a massive one as well. So meditation doesn't necessarily change your thought pattern. Meditation, or the purpose of meditation, is to silence, to experience peace, to quiet down the mind. And then from there, you can have more deliberate control of what kind of thoughts that you want to create and interact with, what kind of frequencies you want to send out and match with and allow them to collapse into physical reality. We're all on this journey together of becoming more deliberate creators of our reality, of tapping into different timelines. And it's such a fascinating journey. And the more that we connect in this space together, the more that we help each other, share tools and resources with each other, the more exciting it becomes. So if you have any questions about this at all, just put them in the comments and I will make more videos about this. I'm super passionate about dimensions and also the science behind it. I find it so much fun. And if you want to learn more about subconscious rewiring, you can download a bunch of free experiences on my website. So go have a look at that. And if you want to know more about subconscious reprogramming, I have a bunch of free resources on my website. So you can experience subconscious reprogramming and know what it feels like to get more deliberate control over your thought patterns and your reality. And if you like this video, subscribe, share, click everywhere, do all of that jazz, because it really helps me continue to make them and I want to share more and more value with you guys. So I will see you in the next one.